Hobby Quick Hits. Delivering that breaking hobby news directly to your earlobes. You want to know those hot drops from the card shop? We've got you covered. With your host, John Newman.
All right, welcome to episode 153 of Hobby Quick Hits. This was not going to be the scheduled episode. I had another one already recorded and planned. And then Friday, some big news happened, sad news. Legendary running back, social rights activist, Jim Brown passed away at age of 87. I'm here in Syracuse. I'm originally from New York City, but I'm here in Syracuse where he played his college ball and, very revered here. I mean, obviously he's a national legend, arguably one of the greatest athletes of all time. But here in Syracuse, we have the distinction of being where he really made a name for himself. So this news really hit this area pretty hard. I know he's not at 87, he's not super young, but, it means a lot to the area. So I knew I was going to do sort of a retrospective and in memoriam episode, so to replace what was going to come out. And, thankfully, Dr. James Beckett, who, knows a lot about a lot, I said, who better to have on to kind of, talk about Jim Brown, the player, the person, and he'll be using some of this audio on a future Sports Card Insights episode as well. So look for that in crossover form there. But I promise you this, and I don't make many, I don't like guarantees all the time. I guarantee you'll learn at least one thing you didn't know. Probably more, but I guarantee you'll learn one thing that you didn't know about Jim Brown on today's episode. So before we get to that, let's get to our great sponsors, Mojo Breaks. We'll go over the weekly the hobby news and what's coming out in product form. And then we'll get myself and Dr. Jim. We'll discuss the legend that was Jim Brown. Don't go away.
MojoBreakShop.com is the best place to get your sealed wax products and brakes. They not only have the best selection, but the best prices. Whether it's a box or a whole case, they are your guys. They ship worldwide to your doorstep. Their reputation as one of the most trusted in the hobby goes unmatched. They are the 2021 Topps Rip Party Champion Breakers. From sports card to Pokemon cards, their selection can't be beat. They offer daily deals and pre-orders.
Hey guys, John Newman here. Mojo's prices are already great, but to save an additional 10% off anything in their store, use the code QUICKHITS. That's QUICKHITS. Check out the full service store that's open 7 days a week in Santa Clara, California, or the website at mojobreak.com. All right, let's go over the releases coming out, new products over the course of the next 2 weeks, starting with the 24th of May, 2022-23, Panini Recon Basketball. On May 24th, you've got 2023 Topps Heritage Baseball, 2023 Topps Star Wars Chrome, 2023 Topps Sterling Baseball. Also on next day, 2025, or May 25th, 2022-23, Upper Deck Trilogy Hockey. On the 26th, 2022-23, Leaf Best of Basketball. Also on the 26th, you have 2023, Leaf Heroes of Wrestling Blasters. Staying with the 26th, you got 2022-23, Panini Donruss Optic Basketball Fast Break. Last day of May, you got 2023 Bowman Baseball Mega Boxes. Also 2021-22 Leaf Pearl Multisport. Also on May 31st, 2023 Onyx Competitors Collection. 2022-23 Panini Impeccable Basketball. 2022-23 Topps NBL Basketball, Upper Deck Marvel Low Key Season 1, rounding out the last release on the 31st, 2022 Panini Donruss Optic Football. As we go into June, you got June 1st, Upper Deck Marvel Allure. June 2nd, 2022-23 Bowman University Chrome Basketball. That has actually come out and been moved up. June 2nd, 2023 Panini Donruss Baseball. Also on the 2nd, 2023 Panini Donruss Racing. Also on the 2nd, Yu-Gi-Oh! Wild Survivor. So a busy next couple weeks, lots of releases. Remember, could be product delays or bump backs, or in the case of University, moved up. So there you go. Choose your weapon. Happy ripping.
Let's go round the hobbyverse and catch up on this week's hobby news.
All right, eBay has announced that their authenticity guarantee is expanding to Canada. So any cards or sneakers sold for over $250 will go through their authentication process. I've used it a few times with no hiccups. So now expanding to Canada. Now, on the same note, sort of related, you may remember the bill passed that anybody that makes over $600 on a selling platform will get a 1099. Well, hold your horses. Senator Sherrod Brown, Democrat out of Ohio, and Senator Dr. Bill Cassidy, Republican out of Louisiana, have a red tape bill where they're trying to get through Congress that they want to change that. So you won't get one, not when you make $600, but when you make $10,000. So they're trying to change that minimum threshold from $600 to $10,000. I know a lot of people would sign up for that in a heartbeat, myself included. So we'll hold on there. We'll see what comes of that. They're trying to get it pushed through ASAP. Ted Williams, 1966 Hall of Fame ring presented to him by the Hall of Fame for being inducted, just closed on Heritage Auctions for $444,000. So pretty cool piece of history there. Has a new owner. And, it looks like Fanatics, one of their early fingerprints on the Topps product, is coming by a way of what they did with the 2023 Bowman Sapphire baseball offering. They did it Dutch auction style. Yeah, you might remember that's Panini's old trick. Well, Fanatics / Topps did that on the 2023 Bowman Sapphire. Boxes are 32 cards per box, one auto per box. It's a 150 card set, and they started the Dutch auction at $850, and then it would go down by $25 every 5 minutes. And then when all the boxes are accounted for at the lowest or the highest bid that will take them all, that's what it sold for. So the boxes brought $350. Now, I'm not a big Dutch auction fan, but I guess it's the best way to, when I always like to say, right, the market should set the price. I guess that's the best way to see what that market price is. So Bowman Sapphire, $350 a box. REA's May Encore auction is going on right now, including 4,000 items, spanning a range of eras from 1887 to 2019. Some of the items in this month's auction: 1941 R336 Play Ball Joe DiMaggio, graded at an SG 8. A 1933 Gowdy Lou Gehrig's SGC 7. A 1933 Gowdy Babe Ruth SGC 5. A 1996-97 Topps Chrome Basketball Factory Sealed Unopened Box, 20 packs. That's Kobe's rookie year. In 1888 N28 Allen and Ginter Mike King Kelly, graded PSA 3. More bunch of sporting news. We got Ty Cobb, Rube Waddle, a Bobby Orr rookie SGC 9, second year. I take that back. Second year. A 1968 Hank Aaron SGC Mint 9. An 81 Topps Football cello box, unopened, 24 packs. That is Joe Montana. And a bunch more. One last thing. McDavid and Ovechkin Upper Deck rookies in PSA Gem Mint 10. And again, the 4,000 cards in this auction, or items, I should say. So cards in memorabilia. Ends in May here, so you got a little bit time left to get your bids in and take home something to add to your inventory for sale or PC. Upper Deck has announced on June 7th, exclusively on their ePack platform, they will be releasing the 21-22 Fleer Ultra Hockey release. Let me go over some specs for you so you know what it entails. You get 8 cards per pack, 15 packs per box, 10 box per case. It's a 250 card digital base set with 3 levels of stacking parallels, medallion inserts, return of many vintage inserts, and all new card designs from Arena Design. Gold spectrums, red foils, green foils, 101 printing plates, Lucky 13 rookies, and the list goes on. Ultra abilities, Seeing Double, Fabulous 50s, circular die cut puck cards of your favorite players, falling 1 per box. Head over to upperdeck.com for more information, but this product is releasing June 7th exclusively on their ePack platform.
And now, our feature presentation.
So I'm with Dr. Jim. Friday we lost, this past week we lost a legendary athlete and gentleman, in Jim Brown, running back for the Cleveland Browns, Hall of Famer, all that good stuff, Dr. Jim. I'm in Syracuse, as you know, and so here it hits, I think it's a national loss, but he really made sort of his bones here at Syracuse University, where I am. So he's even revered even more than, on a national level, which he is. But we kind of claim him here in Syracuse as, where he got his start. And, just some of your thoughts, right off the top here on Jim Brown.
Well, did we do Floyd Little, you and I? Because
we did.
He kicked off a series of incredible Syracuse running backs. But Jim Brown is the quintessential. He's the greatest.
Yeah, he is. He is. In 2002, Sporting News, said that he was the greatest football player of all time. When that conversation comes up, Dr. Jim, about greatest athletes, where it's any sport, it's just they're all. There's no sport tied to you, just the greatest athlete. He's got to be in that conversation, with Jim Thorpe, Bo Jackson. I know Bo Jackson's career was probably a little short to be really considered, but just he's right. To me, it's a lot of times people will tell you it's Jim Thorpe and Jim Brown. And now they played obviously different eras, so that's always tricky sometimes to put them against each other. But, either way, he's arguably, he played 4 sports at Syracuse, football, basketball, track. And here's the crazy thing, Dr. Jim. Some will tell you football wasn't his best sport.
No, lacrosse was his number one sport, but it didn't pay.
Yeah, exactly. And he's in the Lacrosse Hall of Fame, and Syracuse is a huge lacrosse school. We've had some great – I won't go off on that tip. We've had some legendary names in the sport of lacrosse, and people at Syracuse and his coach, his coaches at the time will tell you he was the best lacrosse player Syracuse has ever had. They changed a rule because of the way he played. His size, he used to hold the lacrosse ball and the stick close to his body. No one could he'd literally run up the field. No one could get the ball out of the lacrosse stick, and he obviously scored. They actually changed the rule where I don't know how many seconds, but you can't just keep doing that. You have to release away from your body. So, much like we hear Mel Blount in football, they changed the coverage rules. They changed lacrosse rules for this guy. He averaged 13.1 points a game in basketball. I know I told you before we hit record, he would be at practices for something. He wouldn't necessarily practice all week with the track team, but when they had a meet, and if it was home, they would literally get him out of another sports practice and say, "Hey, we need you," and he would compete and sometimes win those events. And so he wasn't even necessarily he wasn't with the track team, 5 days a week or whatever. He would just compete with him as an athlete. And so just a legendary player. Here's the crazy thing too, as I'm kind of going up on a tangent. He did not get a scholarship to Syracuse. There's some, it was that time, that era, there was, racial stuff going on, as we all know. They didn't offer him scholarships. I think it was a family friend in Long Island literally paid for him initially to go to Syracuse. He didn't start his first year. He didn't start at football when he first got to Syracuse. So just crazy, how the legend became. He wasn't a legend necessarily coming in. He made himself just being the great athlete he was.
I'm Sports Card Insight. So do you think his all-around greatness in all the sports, but especially football as a running back, does he get the measure that he deserves in his card prices? Because he doesn't have that many cards from his career.
No, I mean, he played 9 years. He was a Pro Bowler every year. He was a first-team All-Pro 8 of the 9 years, 3-time MVP, won the MVP and the Rookie of the Year in his first year, obviously. He won the MVP his last year. And, Barry Sanders, the way Barry Sanders retired and the way Jim Brown retired are sort of similar in the fact that Jim Brown was, also went into acting, and he was on the set of a movie, and Art Modell, the owner of the Browns, he didn't think he was going to make it back for training camp in time because of the movie shooting. And he threatened Jim Brown, if you're not back in time for training camp, I'm going to suspend you. Here you have your face of the franchise, and you're telling this guy that. And Jim Brown said, you know what? I retire. So he literally, he didn't appreciate Art Modell's approach to that, and he retired. In his last year, Dr. Jim, he had 1,500 yards rushing, 17 touchdowns, won the MVP, had just won the NFL championship. It wasn't called the Super Bowl, but the NFL championship the year before in 1964. And he just went full time into movies and social justice stuff that he was big into, and very important figure there. So he's just so multi-layered, and like Barry, that would come years later, retired literally at the top of his game when he had more years left in him. So a great point by you, right? He had a short career, but not really so much injuries. It's just, he just said, I'm done when Art Modell kind of took that stance, and could have played for, maybe 3, 4, 5 more years at a higher level. So, I think his rookie card is probably priced with, I have one, so I'll say maybe it should be worth more. I think a lot of his cards after his rookie year, everyone wants that 58 tops. I think that they should probably be more, valued than they probably are.
Did you see the movie One Night in Miami?
I didn't. I've seen some of his movies,
okay.
But
no, that was a movie a few years ago, and it was about Cassius Clay and Jimmy Brown and 4 different black guys at the time that had this meeting before the Clay Liston fight, I guess, in New Orleans, I think, or Miami, whatever. I guess it was Miami, but it's he didn't get any bump from that. The 30 for 30 series. If Michael Jordan gets a movie, then people chase Michael Jordan cards. But I didn't see much bump there. I think there'll be some bump with the reflection of how great he was now that he's passed away. But at 87, I can't imagine him. He quit when he was on top, absolutely. But it's hard to imagine him playing 3 more years and not having some drop off. And I think he had great pride in his ability. And okay, here's my controversial question for you.
Sure.
He's a black man. He's a proud black man. Would you say he's a black mensch?
Oh man, that is a hot seat question.
Well,
I'd like to say yes. He allegedly there was 5 incidents that were reported, where he struck a woman. He wasn't convicted of any of them. He was convicted on a vandalism charge when he smashed, someone he was with's window on her car. But not that, if there was a hall of nice, he probably wouldn't get into that. So, it's like what we would say with Ty Cobb in baseball, right? Maybe not the greatest person in the world, but you can't argue with on the field stuff. So on the field, he's a mensch, but but he also did a lot of great things. You mentioned some stuff that he did a lot of great things off the field with social justice. He started an anti-gang organization for the violence in Southern California. So I guess you could say, does that cancel some of the indiscretion?
My point is, I think he's a black mensch. The black people would consider him an amazing guy.
Oh, no doubt.
Most of the sports writers are white, and the situation he was in, I have a fair number of black friends. Perhaps you do too.
Yes.
And it's a completely different experience, even when you're a great athlete, and especially back in the 50s. And so I don't know the environment he was in, but I can see a lot of good that he did. But I could also see that he probably got some level of abuse and disrespect.
Oh, no doubt. He had a falling out with the university, Dr. Jim, because not only was he getting it at away games, from the opposing, home stadium crowd, there was stuff going on campus, and he didn't feel Syracuse really did enough in-house stuff to curtail. So for a while, he did not come back. But he met with some officials, and they buried the hatchet, and he started coming to football games and events at Syracuse. So there was some love lost there between him and the university and how things have. And he did take a lot of like you said, abuse. A lot of racism he encountered, not only from opposing teams, but even on campus. From in-house stuff too. So
I'm just saying, this is 10 years after Jackie Robinson. Your guy, my guy, that was, football had already been integrated and all that. I'm not saying that. It's just that in the culture, it wasn't full integration in the culture. And so here is this guy that all of a sudden is the best, kind of hands down running back, to that point, and maybe ever.
I think ever. I think when you think of pure running back, even to the point, now we see running backs, Dr. Jim, they get what they can, right? And if the sideline's nearby, they'll scoot out of bounds and live for the next play. That wasn't Jim Brown's motif. He was a guy that would, even for another yard or two, would lower his shoulder and then try to inflict some pain, to the point coaches were like, Jim, stop doing, it was a nice run, take what you got, get out of bounds, save the wear and tear on yourself. But that wasn't his, MO. And coaches had a hard time getting him to do that.
You've done coaching. Wouldn't you really appreciate if your players were all going that extra? You're not, unless they're using their body in some way, but he was a tough guy. And most football players know it's better to hit than be hit.
I think the coaches appreciated Dr. Jim, but I also think they rather have, Jim Brown in the game for the long haul rather than the second guy in the depth chart. So they were trying to, preserve their best guy. And, I would probably, if I was coaching them, like you said, on one hand, I admire how he was, and on the other hand, I'm like, hey, I need you the whole game. Can you get out of bounds. I know you don't. I know you don't like to do it. Blame me,
But
but
John,
get out of bounds.
how many times did he not show up for the game, or was he injured? I think he really had a really good track record of
He did.
showing
He did,
up.
which again is attests to the greatness of him. But when you're a coach, it only takes one play, right? One hit that
Well,
can,
no,
I
but
think,
the other thing is, and again, I know the comparison to Barry Sanders, but Barry Sanders was always at risk for a knee injury because of
yeah,
the different angles that he was coming at. Jim Brown was coming at you pretty straight ahead, and so he wasn't. He was hitting people head on. I mean, Barry Sanders was in all kinds of awkward situations, and completely different running style, but also went out on top.
yeah.
But if he'd have played a few more years, he'd be limping.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure it wasn't just the Modell exchange that was why he retired. I'm sure that was sort of the culmination. I'm sure maybe some of that was on his mind. He was already starting to do movies. Even in the Hollywood realm, he set. He was the first African American to do a first interracial scene in movie history with Raquel Welch. I believe it was 1969. The movie was 100 Rifles. So even on the big screen, he was, setting records, if you want to call, or doing stuff for the first time. So, and again, social justice issues. He got into politics, supported. If you heard him, he says he doesn't. It's not about a political party. It's about the person who can make the country better, and including for African Americans. So he would vote Republican, Democrat, Independent, whoever he felt was best for the country and African Americans in the country. So kind of broke. I don't want to say broke the mold, but it wasn't along party lines. I saw an interview where he said, I voted for Obama and I voted for Trump, and one's obviously Democrat and one's Republican, but I voted for him because of what I believe they stand for and what they wanted to do. So I think that shows you, his conviction.
Again, but Sports Card Insights, the conventional wisdom now is that you got to buy quarterbacks. And maybe then sprinkle a little bit on the wide receivers, but running backs are a bad bet. But if you go back to 58 to 65 or so, the guy is Jim Brown. I mean, or Johnny Unitas is great too, and he's up there. Bart Starr a little behind, Horning a little behind that. But of the guys that played in that period, Jim Brown is the main guy. And then when you go to the late 60s, and it's almost Gale Sayers after that of the number one guy, and it's a running back. And these were running backs that both played less than 10 years, but were when I always say who you're going to collect is kind of the same as when you buy a ticket to the game, who are you buying a ticket to see? And if it was the Cleveland Browns, it wasn't Bill Nelson, or Frank Ryan. It was, or who was the guy back in that time. But it was Jim Brown.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, one of the reasons too, Dr. Jim, and I know you know this, is back then it was more of a running game than the NFL is today, right? Where it's more of a heavier passing game. I mean, even when you compare quarterback numbers from the great quarterbacks of that era to today's quarterbacks dwarf them. That's not to say today's quarterbacks are that much better than the quarterbacks, but it's just a sort of a different game. Offensives have changed, and now they even use short passing game in place of running game, and that's even in the draft. We rarely, this year was kind of an oddball draft. We saw two running backs go in the first round. That doesn't even happen anymore. They used to be in the top picks. Even a Heisman winning running back sometimes may not be a first round pick. And that's just, I think that's a testament to the offensive mindset of coaches in the NFL.
But even a Christian McCaffrey, who's an amazing receiver as well as a really good runner, I just think there's a little bit of a bias against running backs. And I think the theory is that they're not going to have long careers. And yet you've got, again, Barry Sanders and Jim Brown, who had less than 10-year careers, but were stellar.
Yeah.
And so I think collectors ought to not be so dismissive of running backs that can stay healthy and be really good for 7, 8, 9 years.
And we got a couple that, to me in today's game, I got a chance to be those type of guys. And, Derrick Henry, although he's coming down the home stretch, you got a guy like Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis, who I think is a great running back that could play many more years. So I think when it comes to collectors, I think a lot of people want to see it first and then sort of backtrack and try to, kind of scoop up. I think they're afraid of getting burnt. I can't speak for every collector, but
my point is, I'm not sure Derrick Henry was he was a little bit similar to Jim Brown, but not as good. And so if you're investing in Derrick Henry, is he a game changer? Jim Brown was a game changer.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, when I'm sure when defensive coordinators had their meetings all week, it was to stop Jim Brown. That was really the focal point of their game plan on the defensive side of things. And there's still guys like that, but not, like you said, not in the same sense as Jim Brown was. He was, like you said,
John, I don't think they shut him down.
Well, they didn't. I'm saying they tried. That was the game plan.
I'm saying they tried, but Derrick Henry occasionally they can stack the line and shut him down. But Jim Brown, I just think he was good for 100 yards every game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think his average per carry was like 5.2 or 5.7 yards. I mean, you hand it off twice to him, you got a first down, move the chains, and just matriculate up the field, as Hank Stram would say. And so, yeah, I mean, he was the meal ticket, right? For not only the Browns, I think the NFL, like you said, to me, he was, 3 MVPs, a championship. Rookie of the year, and you couldn't stop him. Like he didn't really have bad games. He didn't miss much time, and it was a bruising back. I mean, he wasn't going to really run you, but he'd run through you. I mean, someone asked me like, who's today would you compare to Jim Brown? And we talked about him, and he's not Jim Brown. But probably Derrick Henry's style is the closest to today's player to what Jim Brown was in the 50s and 60s. And, they don't make them really like that anymore.
But it's like you probably did playground sports like I did. He's the first guy picked on the playground,
Yeah.
And he can play whatever position he wants to play. He could have played linebacker. He could have played offensive.
He did play. Here's the crazy thing. He did.
Yeah.
He did play defense at Syracuse, and in some crucial moments, he did play on the other side of the ball. He wasn't playing Iron Man football where he was playing both sides of the ball all game, but he does have defensive stats. He kicked at Syracuse as well. So he was a kicker. He played some defense. In high school, he was in Long Island in high school. He was the all-time average scoring record until another Hall of Famer that you might recognize came along afterwards and broke that record. Carl Yastrzemski broke Jim Brown's basketball average per game scoring record. So for many years, Jim Brown was the average points per game leader in Long Island high school history, and then Carl Yastrzemski took that title away. So there's just so much. I mean, there you got 2 Hall of Famers in different sports, but yet that was basketball. And that just shows you the athletes they were, and Yastrzemski himself as well.
Yeah. My last sports card insight. What was it going to be? Gosh, I forgot what I was going to say. Let me think about that. You were talking about.
Well, here's another thing people probably didn't realize. He served in the military reserves. He was in the reserves, so he served for this country. I don't think that gets talked about a lot, Dr. Jim. It's not obviously it's not at the top of the list with his accolades, but some people may know that, but some people may not. He was in the military reserve, so he served his country, cared about political things. He cared about this country, one of the first things he did when he retired was, you talked about it, himself, Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, they formed, an organization for social justice and in rights, and those are all huge names, obviously, and so packed a lot of clout, and cared enough to to do that, put themselves out there. I know Jim Brown was very critical of Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. He said he felt like they didn't use the platform they had to take more of a stand that they could have, that they were a little bit, I think he called them sort of selfish, rather than, taking a stand and that sort of thing. He was very critical of certain athletes who didn't do things that they could have with the power they had. So he was a big voice, on the field, obviously as a player, and even when his career was over, even past films, just in social justices and in social climates and change. He was right there at the forefront of that.
I mean, basically, again, the conventional wisdom is when somebody dies, their card prices go up for a little while and then they come down.
Yeah.
I think this could be an exception because when Jim Brown goes under the microscope, now that he's passed away, I think people will be amazed if they look at the clips, they look at the stats, and translate it and convert it to modern day metrics. This guy was like a Babe Ruth, head and shoulders above his peers. And so I don't know that it's going to bump up and then drop back down. It could bump up and stay up because this guy was the real deal. So that's my final sports card insight, is that, again, people that just think that this is just the way it is. Guy dies, the cards go up, and then 2 weeks later it goes down. I'm not so sure that's going to be the case here. This guy's a genuine hero, especially to black men. He was a complicated guy. I'm not denying that, but I've never been black. And so, I've never been an all pro, all world running back either. And the challenges of that are pretty amazing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's going to be obviously a bump because of his passing, and I do agree. I think that bump is going to be a permanent one, and I think it should be. And I think even some of the cards non-rookie, right? We're going to see maybe more of a demand for that, right? The other, when someone only plays 9 years, it's easier, let's say, to get all the run of their playing cards in comparison to someone who plays 20, 25 years. So I think there'll be some people that say, you know what, he played 9 years. Let me get the rookie and let me start getting the second year and so on and so forth. And so I think we'll see a run up of all those cards. And like you said, that's traditionally what happens when a Hall of Famer passes away. But, besides the Hall of Famer, like you said, there's probably not going to be another Jim Brown ever again. You hear people who played with him, played against him. They ask those former players, who do you like? In today's game, who would you compare? And usually the general consensus is no one. There's only one Jim Brown. I'm not even gonna mention, with all due respect, I'm not gonna mention another player in the same vein. So it's Jim Brown and then a lot of other great running backs. And so, and those are from people who played the game.
He was the best guy on the field. And when I watched his games, that's really what it was. He was the best guy on the field.
Yeah, no doubt. And, here in Syracuse, he's 87, but he meant a lot to the program, especially after they sort of mended fences and he was coming back here on a pretty regular basis. So one little tidbit that many may not know, Jim Brown passed away 60 years to the day that Ernie Davis passed away. So exactly 60 years later, Jim Brown passed, and there's some sort of symbolic there. It went Jim Brown. Jim Brown recruited Ernie Davis to Syracuse. Ernie Davis recruited Floyd Little to Syracuse. And when I heard that it was 60 years to the day when Ernie Davis, unfortunately, way too young and before his NFL career started, from leukemia. And here's the crazy thing: you know, the Browns drafted Ernie Davis, and they had Jim Brown. That was set up to be sort of a 1-2 Syracuse backfield punch with Jim Brown and Ernie Davis, and unfortunately, wasn't to be. Ernie took sick and never got in a regular season game, but that would have been something to see, obviously. Well, obviously, it's sad to lose, a legendary player such as Jim Brown, but it was great talking with Dr. Jim, getting his thoughts. He saw him play. I lived through highlights and stories and that, but I know Dr. Jim always does shows. When a legendary, whether it be a hobby figure or a athlete, passes, he usually does a tribute to them, and so I knew he would do it. So I kind of reached out to him and said, "Hey, I'm in Syracuse. I know a lot about him. Do you want to do it?" And he was gracious. His show is also out today as well, Sports Card Insights, with both of us waxing poetic about Jim Brown. So if you're listening to this, head over to Dr. Jim's podcast, Sports Card Insights, and get that as well. His is a little shorter than this show, at around 12 to 15 minutes. So check them both out. We appreciate you listening. If you enjoy the show, we appreciate positive reviews. We ask you to be well, take care, and we'll see you very soon.